Should be live. So thanks, everybody. Welcome to Code It Live. We didn't really talk about the stream. I think I called this a mystery stream. So if you found us, I'm not sure how you're here, but welcome. My name is TJ Van Tol. I work as a developer advocate for Progress. With me is Dan Wilson, who I think stepped away. There's Dan. He's not even hearing this introduction. Dan, so Dan's walking away. Dan's taking this super seriously. We've also got Nathan Smith. Nathan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Nathan. I work at right-est Studios, primarily front end, and kind of know enough full stack to be dangerous, and I don't know.
Yeah, and then Salem, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. My name is Salem. I'm an engineer at Etsy. I work on the web platform team. I make sure that things build and go fast, and hopefully don't stop building or stop going fast.
Gotcha. So today we're doing something. This is an experiment, but what we're trying out is, the name of this Twitch channel is called Code It Live, right? So we wanted to try to have some people code something live. So Nathan and Salem have graciously offered to be our guinea pigs today. And essentially we threw together a little example that these guys are going to try to code. And Dan and I are basically like the commentators, right? Like Dan's probably the color commentator. I'm the analyst. I don't know. What's Aikman and why is my brain blanking here?
I think it's closer to Holy Moly, the golf show, putt golf show.
The putt. Exactly.
Yeah. There's no way he's finishing this course.
I think, TJ, you say things like, and he just typed a semicolon. And I say things like, I remember the last time he typed a semicolon.
You do like John Madden. If he'd have caught that in the end zone, that'd have been a touchdown. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
You got the voices down, man. You nailed Seinfeld earlier.
Let's scrap the agenda. It'll just be fake sports commentary.
All right, so I threw my screen up here, and code is telling me about an update. And so what I did is I put together a little template project, and I'll go ahead and toss this in the chat. Let's put this both in the Twitch chat, then I'll also put this in the chat amongst us, so these guys can grab it as well. And essentially what this is this is a little app that I built with Create React app. And I'll go ahead and run it, or I'll try to run it. There we go. Run start, just so we can see what this app looks like. Oh, it opened it up in Chrome, which is fine. There is not much to this app right now. It's going to take a second to load here.
And he wasn't kidding, folks. There really isn't much to it at all.
So this is for the pizza chain Pizza-O-Matic. And this is essentially like a good old-fashioned dashboard with some information on different, how did you say this, Dan? This is different like regions of Pizza-O-Matic's chains, Northeast, Southwest. This is like a CEO dashboard. Like they come in and look for data about their organization. And the way we structured this, if I look into so this is the template itself, and there's a JSON file, and I'll bump this up a bit so it's very obvious to see. There's a JSON file in the data folder that's got raw data for the restaurants and the regions. So this top level object is regions, north, and then there's different restaurants within it. And then the code for itself right now is in this panel.js file. So it's not very modular. In fact, it's not really modular at all at the moment. I've got a chart that I brought in from Kendo React and a grid that I brought in from Kendo React. And you'll see that right now there was a little bit of data in there, but it's basically just hard-coded stuff. So what we're going to task you guys with doing, and we're just going to chat through this and try to have a little fun today, is take this fake data and basically make it real data instead, coming from this JSON file. And as sort of we're not sure how long any of this is going to take, really. So there's also, because we're going to try to spend an hour on this, there's also a little PDF in here that Dan threw together with the sort of data you could put into the grid. This is sort of like, I'd say probably like stretch goals. If you get through this and you want to start, you could take a look at this PDF and find some things to implement as well. Does that make sense? Like any questions before we dive into this?
That makes sense. Let me see. Okay.
So it's fair to say that the layout that TJ provided is, you don't have to use it if there's something you prefer. But I think because this is a React show, we didn't want it to also be an HTML show. And so that was the intent behind it. But if that's getting in your way or blocking you, then use something that you're either more familiar with or you have pre-made. That's equally fine. There's some extra functionality in the PDFs, like how to download to a grid or export as a PDF. Those are all this stuff is optional. So, start where you want, end up where you want, and should just see how you take it on.
So that was my spiel. So were you both able to download the repo okay, or at least refer to it?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. So I've got your guys' screens here as well. And I should also mention, go ahead.
Is this something, or sometimes I end up with that if I do like npm install whatever, and then I say save dev, and it puts save dev in here. I think that's probably what that is, right?
Did I install save?
I think so.
That's amazing. Also, like trash talking my template is fair game as well. So if you don't like something that I did, like if I installed the save package, that's special, which apparently save is a thing.
Let's see. So if we just save,
it's probably in 22,000 JavaScript libraries.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably have this but don't know it.
66,000 weekly downloads for a simple CRUD-based abstraction for storing objects.
What I love though is if you go here, save dev, they've made this one. Like, hey guys,
Oh.
I'm gonna copy all
like
this over.
When
quick.
the quarantine stuff started happening, and everybody thought that there was like the company with the ticker Zoom on the stock market, and that it was like either like a shell company or like they had gone bankrupt but were still listed or something, and their stock price just skyrocketed because people thought that they were like the Zoom
oh no
conferencing software.
That's great.
Just remember, markets are always rational.
Yep. I'm gonna do just a giant copy paste in here, just because I have prettier and all that over here. I don't know which should be more onerous, setting up prettier and all that stuff I'm used to, or just probably just dropping over all this and the other one would be easier.
So
no.
You're using VS Code. So I just put your screen up.
Okay.
Are there any extensions in VS Code that you sort of swear by? I'm assuming like prettier, you have like a VS Code extension to help.
So I think I'll just
help enforce that, or
let me see. Let me make sure this. We do npm install real quick and make sure everything's not bombing out.
Yeah, I'm looking at my setup too because I'm just to compare and contrast here.
I guess wireframes I need, right? Let's see here. Can I do this? Does it let me?
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, you can totally do that. I see you guys are both dark theme users, so I have to judge you. I'm like one of the only holdouts on team light theme.
I'm light theme for everything, like Slack and everything.
Oh, everything light theme, yeah.
But for I feel like for coding, I'm just so used to it being dark.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like I was really lucky enough to be at a beach not too long ago, and I was working there it just didn't make sense to have a dark theme. So I like a light theme and a dark theme and a toggle them depending on whether or not I was working outside or inside. But I'm working inside, so dark theme.
I could appreciate having multiple setups. I think for me, it was I do enough like presentations and such that having the contrast, like I'd always, when I give a talk or something, have to have the contrast like cranked up, right? I'd always do like basically white background, black text, more or less. That eventually just grew on me, and instead of just switching back and forth, I just went with like high contrast always sort of deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. A coworker told me about this one. It's called Tenacious, and then they have one. There's one that's, what is it called? High contrast, which is like all the colors are meet accessibility standards and everything.
Ah.
So I was trying that out to see if we liked it as like a code theme for other stuff, and then I just left it. It's pretty cool. Honestly, I couldn't figure out how to get back the Sublime default. I was like, I don't know how to get Monokai to come back, so this is good enough.
I always wonder, part of me is like where some of these extensions and themes come from sometimes, like who are the random people, because I don't know if anybody sells like VS Code extensions. I don't know. As far as I know, no one does. So I'm not sure who are like the kind souls that just toss out some of this work for free.
So is this, did I do that? Oh, I see. Is it the wrong color up here for me?
It's probably some CSS somewhere.
Okay. Okay. Excuse me. Yeah, it used to be all about Sublime, and then I was on a banking project for a while where we had a VPN or like connect to a remote Windows VM where we didn't have admin control, and so I couldn't install any Sublime plugins, and so I switched to Code because you could. And then after I was done with that project, I couldn't remember what I had done for Sublime, so I just stuck with Code.
Yeah, I was a Sublime user for the longest time, and I don't even necessarily know why I changed. I think it was because we were doing more and more stuff with NativeScript, which I was working on the time in VS Code, and so I was in there for that. And it was similar enough to Sublime, anyways. Like I feel like VS Code stole all the best parts of Sublime, so
it really did.
So it was really like felt very familiar, but then it kept getting updates because Microsoft threw all sorts of money and development time in it. So
yeah, it's an interesting little thing that they did, because I've been an IntelliJ user for a long time, and they sell their IDE, and it's not sort of a corporate thing like Microsoft. And then Microsoft comes out of the blue and scoops up the IDE space by cutting everybody out on price. And IntelliJ had great features and great plugins, and it was very snappy, but I don't really know how much better it would be than VS Code at this point. And you got to kind of wonder, what's Microsoft's game here? Like, are you really just trying to cut everyone else's knees?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the code thing isn't free, and they used to sell Visual Studio.
I mean, they have really good Azure integration, so I don't know if that's part of their
Azure driver.
I think it's just like a goodwill, like we want the JavaScript community to love us.
And
we're Microsoft, so we can throw millions and millions of dollars at that. I don't know.
You don't buy goodwill, huh?
Well, goodwill is like, it's hard to find corporate. It's hard to find sincere corporate goodwill. And here's the other piece. I actually would almost rather not have goodwill, because then that can turn into unreliable, and things that I make money off of, I need to still be there. And so if this is goodwill and they pull a Google and tomorrow they shut it down, like the litany of Google products that have disappeared, it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, remember Reader?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff like that where call it goodwill. I mean, I don't know if it's truly goodwill. I think we're looking at ad drivers, but here we are.
Yeah, I think
you
after
guys remember
Inbox
Google Wave?
Oh, actually, I thought Google Wave was brilliant. I really did. I was maybe in like middle school or high school at the time, but I was like, this is going to change everything.
It's a great concept.
Like, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. You were going to say something, Salem, and I talked right over you like an idiot. What were you going to say?
Oh, no. I mean, I was gonna say that I've been like recently. I mean, this is true for a lot of things in my life, but I've recently just started putting my money where my mouth is, kind of in like a software sense. Like, I'm more willing to pay for stuff. I mean, I have a salary, adult now and things like that. I don't have to like, be like a high schooler and pirate Adobe Photoshop to make like my MySpace page good. But I like, for example, I bought Things, which is a to-do app, one of like many, but I was like willing to pay for it, and I was willing to pay for like I'm starting to use fast mail and things like that, just because I want them to stay around, and I want to know that I'm making sure that they stay around by investing in them, and that's like my own little like.
Yeah, we recently got our 8-year-old a Chromebook just because COVID and everything going on. We're going to start school online this fall.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes with Google's Play Store. So he's been able to install apps, and we set his account to be able to install E for Everyone. And the games are okay, but some of the ads, man, that run, he's like, Daddy, this ad had this and this and this in it. We're like, what? And I'd almost rather, like you're saying, I'd rather give money to the game studios so that they don't have to just kind of open the floodgates on whatever random advertisement, because that's not rated, So, yeah, it's interesting.
That's a fair point. I never thought about that.
It's the old adage. Is that how you say it? Adage of if you're not paying, you're the product, right?
That's it.
Yeah. So, and I'm kind of okay with that, but like I don't want my kids to be the product. So.
Plus, there's lots of conversations that would be great to have later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Daddy,
we don't get to know that yet,
Yeah,
it took me a second.
I have 9-year-olds, so I totally get it. Especially like they have our old devices, phones, essentially for playing some games, and like the only time I have to worry generally about it is like sometimes the ads that get shown, there's very little scrutiny over some of these, and it gets to be the Wild West.
I would never, as a marketer, recommend you block advertising, but there's this rumor of this thing called Pi-hole, which is like an ad redirector where it's basically a DNS front, and so it knows the DNS hosts of popular ads, and so if you put this Pi-hole thing and route everything through there, it kind of peels off the ads because it doesn't work. You know what I mean? It's make a call to an ad server, it can't reach it. And if you could get good ads, this is like the whole conundrum. Like I wouldn't mind getting ads for things that I'm currently researching, but I often get ads for things I've already bought or have no interest in buying. And it's like, I love what you guys are doing. Like you almost got me. I was almost your target market, but you're just late. And if I could tell you that you're late, I could save you money and me money, because then I wouldn't have to pay for therapy dealing with all these ad bombardments.
We got a car last year for my wife, and lately we've been getting tons of email about the 2020 model of the same car. Like, we're not really putting miles on it right now because we're not, driving during COVID or whatever. But it's just funny because it's like, oh, we see that you bought a dishwasher. Are you a dishwasher collector? Like other people also bought this. Like, do you want to buy it too? Like, no, I'm good.
So, dishwasher, a newfound dishwasher connoisseur.
Collector. I love it.
Yeah. Like I'm not collecting that model Toyota like into perpetuity. Like one is fine for me right now.
So Salem, I just switched to your screen and I have to know what I'm seeing here because this looks kind of cool.
Oh,
what are you doing?
If I have one thing that I think has changed how I like do stuff on my computer, it's this app. I'm like not even using it for what it's like meant to be used for. It's like a snapshotting app. It's called Snappy. I think the website's like just gonna Google stuff on the screen. Hope I get the right thing. This one, snappy-app.com. Their whole thing is like just screenshots and you can share them places. But the only thing that I really use them for is this like really smart tool. There's a keyboard shortcut you get, and it lets you just take a picture of a part of your screen, and it just hovers around. And when you're done with it, you can double click it and it comes away. And then you can bring it back by going up to the menu and double clicking it and it comes back. And I can doodle on it and I can like type on it. And,
so you've notated the important nodes here so you can get back to them later.
Yeah, just kind of trying to keep my eyes on the right thing. I'm like pretty bad at focusing in general, which is a kind of an interesting thing when you're trying to do a demo on a TV. But what I'm doing here is I want to be able to transform this data into something that I can find useful. I've done like the dumb thing of just importing it. I've turned this JSON file into a JS file by just putting export default at the beginning of it, which is like not good.
I love it.
It's not good. Like what I would want to do is ideally serve this separately so that the UI doesn't kind of like rely on this data to be shipped with it in order to get started. But just for the sake of getting things working and then refining later, left a big old note. Then I just put this export default there, and now it's a JavaScript concept. That's all it took. So I'm making this file to kind of do some manipulation here first.
So when you're saying loaded like independently, is that like, do you mean like lazy load in the data so that the UI doesn't hang up for the data to come in?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like, and say, like this is like not particularly a ton of data, but say you're like, expanding quickly and then this data, like your pizza business is taking off because everybody's just ordering in because COVID's happening. I wish that was the case. I actually think that's the case. But if this file gets to be like a few megabytes and your boss goes to open this dashboard and on his like, ancient BlackBerry or something like that and has to download a few megabytes of data over a 3G antenna, you don't want to have like that data being the thing that blocks him from or her from seeing the overview or seeing any sort of loading experience. Yeah, a loading experience is something that'll make people like more patient with your application rather than just like, staring at a blank screen and then seeing everything at once.
So what syntax would you use? Like, not saying you have to implement the full thing, because I do exactly what you do, and I just hack it into a JS file all the time. But like, what syntax would you use to implement that?
Well, if there was like, if this is being served from an API, I would put it in API, and then use fetch to grab it. Here, because it's a module one, like in the intermediate step is I could use the import function. I don't know how visible my screen is here, but the import function rather than like the import statement would let us like fetch it asynchronously if we are, depending on the build system and how the build system handles this. I guess by default, Webpack would see this as like as a code splitting point, and it would put the data pizza store data module into its own chunk, which would then be served asynchronously whenever I hit that import call. I think I'm like also like again like a little bit divorced from like what product development looks like in leading edge React world. So like there may be a cleaner way of doing this, but
Gotcha.
this is just the first thing that's coming to my head here. I can't tell if Dan is shocked or this meeting.
He's engrossed.
Well, I thought it was very appropriate that you go right into what's the build system going to think. I mean, you're definitely on brand.
Yeah, that's all I think about is what is the build system going to think about. I'm also probably going to do something gross, like play with this in the browser rather than in the terminal, rather than in the REPL, so that I can, or in the editor, so I can get like a faster feedback loop on what kind of manipulation I want. So here's our data.
That's a fun idea too. Just get the browser's tools for fooling around.
Yeah, because browsers are great. I actually don't even know if Firefox. I know Firefox has what's it called, preview completion, but I know Chrome does now, which is kind of neat. And I'm sure if any Firefox developers are out there, I'm sure they're hearing that and being like, "Yeah, we know we're looking at it." But I know in Firefox you can do like I don't know, let's see, like data. Okay, cool. So you actually do get completion. It's perfect. Look at that. I can see exactly what data I want.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do right now first is, I guess, take each restaurant by name and then, or I guess by region here, and then convert it into an object of rating. Let me figure out how exactly this charting library points us to
Yep.
this data.
I'll switch back over to Nathan to see where he's at.
So I think I'm doing this right. I'm pulling in my do Ajax to get the thing. So I'm gonna wrap this stuff up here. Remains to be seen if I did this right or not. Hold on. Let's get the root.
It is interesting to me that you went the full like setting up like a context right from the very beginning.
I was thinking like if I just did the regular JSON approach, I think it'd take me longer than if I just cut and pasted what I had from another boilerplate, like we have for our like if you're not using GraphQL, we have like a use reducer boilerplate. So I was like, I'm gonna do that because I don't want to fumble around and like try to remember how to do the other way. So it's not me trying to be like show off. It's like this is made already, and it's like that's 2 weeks ago Nathan did it already, rather than like live Nathan fumbling on the call.
It's all good. I mean, that was part of the rules. Use whatever you want. And even the TV chefs look at what they made before.
I got to do my ASCII art, like we did last time. Boom.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, that's very helpful when you're looking at that high-level code view on the top right to know what section is what.
Yeah. So I think that's right. Let me see if this runs again and doesn't bomb out. Like I haven't done anything yet, but oh wait, I'm installing. I was gonna do. I pressed up thinking I was gonna do npm start.
There was this book that was popular quite a while ago. I want to say it was 15 years ago at this point, called The Pragmatic Programmer. Do you guys remember that book? Anyone?
Yeah.
So in there was this concept of tracer bullets where you kind of leave yourself little flags or visual elements or something to know where you're at and what you're doing. And this technique that you're using reminds me a lot of that section of the book. For all 150,000 listeners to the broadcast right now.
How many do we have on Twitch, actually?
I
don't have the Twitch tab open.
Oh, just a handful. I think like 5 people, something like that. So hello, all 5 of you. I don't even know how you found this because we didn't like promote this or talk about this stream at all. This sort of came up out of nowhere. But thank you for joining around. And if you are just popping in, what we're doing today is a little bit of an experiment. Nathan and Salem are both coding up a little sort of sample app that we put together and try to wire up some data. And we're trying this approach where they're coding it and we go back and forth and chat and see how they're approaching this problem. So if you have any questions or any sort of feedback, feel free to chime in.
What's interesting is I got an email. I'm just forwarding it to you now, TJ. When you went live, this got triggered out. And apparently we're not doing React today.
Oh, we're not?
No, it's XAML.
Oh, wow. We have the wrong crowd.
And by the name TJ, that's clearly a pseudonym. Your name really is Sam. So we've straightened all that out.
You're under my mystery identity. I do XAML work under what's the, man, I'm struggling with words today. What's the, like, when you write under a different name, ghostwriting? I ghostwrite under Sam.
Pseudonym.
Yeah.
No,
I ghostwrite XAML under the name Sam. It's
guilty. We got you. Well, that's what you get for working on your vacation, TJ. What do you expect? I mean, you're in vacation mode.
Yeah, we're getting ready to go camping, so that's what we're doing after.
Oh, are you going to the dunes?
No, not to the dunes. Not that exciting. Just a somewhat local campsite for a few days for the kids.
Is it decent weather up there? It's 95 here, so I don't know how it is where you're at, but the last thing I want to do is camp.
It's going to be in the low 80s, so
beautiful.
Quite a bit more reasonable.
Make sure you brought an extra tent. We'll be right up.
Come join us.
We'll start the 12-hour drive here pretty shortly. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm wearing reading glasses, and I'm not quite over the fact I'm wearing them. But when I do that, the screen is a lot clearer. So I've got to go through this process to just agree to keep wearing them because it feels very strange. But it is nicer.
I wear them in front of the screens only, so you've ever met me in person, which Dan has, I don't wear them outside of the screen, but otherwise my eyes start to hurt after a day of looking at code. So I'm curious, Nathan, some of the app state and stuff you have in here as well. Is this stuff you're copying over from another project as well?
This was just like boilerplate that I did for setting up use reducer and use context. I'm actually not sure what I'm doing wrong over here. I'm missing something, but I don't know what it is. I'm not finding.
I think we can't quite, at least I can't quite read your terminal.
Oh, you know what would be awesome is if I put like, if I'm going to use Express, I put in a file that calls it, right?
Isn't that most of software development?
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out what connects to what, or what's touching what, or referring to what.
If source gets built and you're not really using the server because that's not production, maybe don't put it in source. I think it's expecting it here. Let me get this out of here. Move. Remember Nick Burns, computer guy? Move.
No.
It's this old SNL skit where it's Jimmy Fallon and he's the computer repair guy, and he's like, "Oh, well, you didn't, do some technical sounding term." And they're like, "What?" And he goes, "Move," and then he just like gets Outlook working for him again. And he goes, "By the way, you're welcome. You've attempted to import reduce, it just falls out." What? Relative imports outside of source is not supported.
So Salem, what do you know what theme you're using for VS Code?
I kind of do. I know that I picked it because this is cool, but I actually don't know off the top of my head. It's called, this is called Horizon Bold. I think
Horizon Bold.
There's a bunch of Horizon ones, and then this one has Bold sometimes. I think I picked it because it had a white version too that was just great too. There it goes, Horizon Bright Bold, and this is what I would use when I was on the beach doing a total screen, enjoying myself, and it's horrible.
What was the keyboard shortcut you used to bring up your like theme picker?
Oh, I always just Command Shift P and then go to I think color theme, and then it's pretty easy to just pick through the things that I installed.
Color. I searched theme and for some reason it wasn't coming up. Apparently, I'm using Quiet Light, whatever that is. It's one of the built-in ones, I think.
Yeah, I always find that whenever I'm looking at themes, there's like 1 or 2 out of 100 that I would actually use, and there's a whole bunch I just couldn't imagine ever making work. Like there's a wine theme, like that's a pretty interesting theme right there. It's very light brighty.
I have a one extension I really like is Material Icon Theme. And the main reason I like it, and I don't know why I consider this a big deal, but it replaces the arrows in the File Explorer with folders, like actual icons of folders. And for some reason, that makes my brain way happier to see just a little folder where the folders are.
Oh, yeah. And then it opens up and closes and stuff, and you toggle.
Yeah, exactly. There's 2 icons, essentially an open folder and a closed folder, and I don't know why, but I far prefer that to the little arrow. It always bothered me in Sublime too. Like I had to find a Sublime theme that gave me folders.
I'm an idiot. I wasn't doing provider. I was trying to wrap my app in context. Maybe I should have just done the hard coded. All right, yay! Now it's rendering with I've got it back to how you gave it to me, which is good, I guess.
Yeah, one step at a time.
So, now let me actually look at this pizza. Renamed it just because it was easier for me to remember. All right, so that's that. Restaurants. I'm gonna do split view here.
And if you don't like the JSON file, you can yell at Dan. He's the one that set that up.
No, that's fine. Let's see.
I'm noticing some of the data, and it's like that one restaurant's got a cleanliness factor of 1.9 out of 5 and a customer rating of 0.8. I'm not shopping there.
Yeah, how's that place still open?
Our mythical CEO would use this dashboard to get on the phone and fix something or somebody. You know, while we're kind of chewing through this, one of the reasons why we kind of went this route was because it's pretty simple to find to-do apps across the JavaScript ecosystem of how to build a to-do app. But almost nobody has a to-do app to work on at work. And so this, I felt like, was contrived enough, but also businessy enough. Like, I don't know how it's coming across on your side, but do you find this type of app is easier to work in, or do you find it presents different challenges or a different mindset?
No, to-do app? I mean, this one seems more real world, definitely.
Well, the world of pizza franchises is very competitive.
It is nowadays.
Okay, I was looking to see where this is. I was like, what? Where is this all coming from? I thought it was like passed down from here. I'm like, I'm not seeing anything that looks like what's on the right in the left, right? Oh, sorry, this is just ESLint rules yelling at me. This because it's not.
Oh, what didn't it like about what I typed?
Oh, ours is just set up to prefer arrow functions instead.
Okay.
And then it's yelling at me now, probably because there's no prop types. So if I do this, like types, maybe I went too close to the real world because it's going to take forever to type all this stuff, right?
Well, in a sense, I mean, it's in a way that is sort of real worldy. Like, I feel like lots of times when I code something for real, there's a lot more ceremony before you actually start to get anything done, for better or worse. I'm surprised it's did it
do this just because most for me it seems like most are default exports, but go either way.
I do find it interesting to see some of the things you guys are changing that I totally wouldn't have thought about.
That's not bad. Why are they doing that? Why don't they not like that?
Yeah. Does ESLint actually enforce, like, Kinetics enforce like exports at the bottom of the file, or is that just a personal preference thing?
No, just personal preference. Because I always get confused, like when I have const, I'm like, where are my exports going? So I always move my exports just to the bottom. I don't know, unless it's something like, unless it's only exporting stuff, and I guess it's still at the bottom. But yeah, I don't know. I just tend to move it towards all the exports being in one spot.
I'm going to switch back to Salem here for a second because I know he's been grinding through this JSON file for a while. So you're doing like average ratings for a region, it looks like?
Yeah, so I'm just doing actual like data yelling stuff. Like I have, I'm just accumulating all the ratings for each region, and I'm trying to divide it out at the end. I don't actually know if you can do divide equals, and this is making me think that divide equals is not a thing.
I've never used that operator before in my life. Like I would have, if you would have asked me, I would have guessed that was a syntax error. I got to try this now.
I I remember seeing it was maybe in like one of the recent stage 3s or something like that. Like I remember seeing it was in the pipeline, but considering it's, and it didn't yell at me when I put it in the browser, but considering that the like pre and post division numbers are identical and it should be divided by 26, it's making me think maybe I should just do this the long way, and that's like it's fine with me.
I'm looking this up though now because at least I'm trying to. Isn't the easiest thing to just
To Google /equals.
Yeah, so x/=y is the same as x=x/y.
Wow.
Yeah,
It looks like what he was doing.
That should be it. Although I've never, I don't know if I've just missed it, but I've never typed that before in my life. I've never seen that before.
I never seen it. I'm going to paste this in the comments and get yelled at probably. Oh, I guess I can't even do that. Well, there you go. There's a link that I used, and it had a bunch of these operators.
Yeah, I'll paste it in the main chat.
Like one operator that everybody uses all the time is the bitwise exclusive OR assignment. Like I see that in everybody's code.
Which one? I don't think I know what you're talking about.
Bitwise XOR, so it's either 1 or it's 1, but it isn't 1 and 1. Like it has to be opposite. And
you see people use this? What is
this?
It's
the most popular JavaScript operator there is.
I
Next
see.
to exponentiation assignment, which looks like this. It's almost equal in popularity. Try to guess what that does.
X** equals Y.
I love that one. That's one of my favorites. I use that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to exponentiate things? Only savages.
Like it's to the point where I'm not even sure where you're being satirical or not at this point.
Like I'd ever be satirical. And now you really don't know.
I know. I have to look this up for my own because I don't really trust you.
Throw that developer Mozilla link in the main chat just so people can follow along in case they care. Oh, you did.
I did. Yeah.
What an overachiever.
Way ahead of you. I think some of these, if you actually use some of these operators in a production app, I think it's actual grounds for being fired in several states. Logical nullish assignment X ? Equals Y. Why? I don't understand.
It's like a code equivalent of a shrug emoji. Like, I think maybe?
Yeah. I didn't even know. Oh, yeah, okay.
Hey, I've just ran into something stupid if you want to hear about it.
Yeah.
I kept being like, okay, so I want to make sure that the numbers pre-division are, bigger than the numbers post-division. So every time I would open up the pre-rating totals, it would update to the newest values in memory. So they would just match because it was the same object. So if I really wanted to do this properly, I'd probably have to do something like make a new object and do one of these.
Like dynamically create an object on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, this is just for logging for myself, but that was annoying. I was like, damn, I thought this divide operator would just work. I was so proud of it.
The old pass by reference.
You would think that you'd stop getting bit by that, after doing it for I don't know how long. Since forever. JavaScript has never been different about that.
At least in this case, it was you had some hint of it. I've totally done that before where I think the more common is like maybe you need to keep track of 2 users for whatever reason. And before you make changes to the second user, you intended to clone the first user, but you're actually just pointing at the same object, and you start making changes to the second one and not realizing you're changing the exact same object. At least I feel like I've debugged that problem 50 times at this point.
I did today, there's some unrelated work that we're doing to tear out underscore. I mean, Etsy's code bases, so it's very old. So a lot of the work that we do is tear out this library that nobody, modern world reaches for anymore. But at the time it was really useful. So underscore has a default method, which is like object assign, but kind of reverse, in that you give it the object you want, and then you just give it a bunch of defaults, and it'll just make sure that all the defaults are assigned to the object. Just like literally object assignment with the reverse. But the catch though is that I think there was either something about how we were automatically cloning the results of that, or it clones things for you. And so you can't just swap it out with object assign. And I found that out the hard way by just failing a bunch of tests after trying to transform all the code that did it and trying to figure out where that bug was coming from.
Yeah, the destructuring sort of, or what's the word I'm looking for? The ... operator, the like spread operator trick for cloning objects is super handy, because I remember back in the day having to do like underscore craziness, and like underscore had like a clone object method, and then you could pass it an option whether you wanted it to do a deep copy or not. Like, and now typically do the trick you just did, just quickly create a clone on the fly. So Nathan, you're working on parsing the JSON now?
Yeah, I'm just putting them all in my app.js file for now. I'm just kind of looking through here, look at what we got. So basically I want to look through, I want to check the name too. Nothing like being on the spot that makes you forget like all the stuff you'd normally do.
Yep.
Last year I was interviewing and like I knew that I could do a particular question and I was just totally drawn a blank because the guy said, okay, as you code, go ahead and like talk through it. But like when I engage the language part of my brain, I can't really type. I don't know. I think some people can, but for me, I'm like listening to myself as I'm typing it. So I was like, I'm drawing a blank. And we kind of ran out of time towards the end. 5 minutes after I hung up, I was like, oh my gosh, like the quick sent up a code snippet, you know, and I was like, there's no way to prove that I didn't totally like just Google for this, but like I sat down and it came to me because I wasn't talking, you know? So yeah.
I feel that like talking while you're doing stuff is like, it's I don't know, just those are the same parts of your brain trying to drive at the same time, like trying to drive two different things at the same time.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's usually hysterical.
It's really hard.
Yeah, I found that doing like DevRel and giving talks has kind of helped me do that. But at the same time, usually when I do it, it's something that's at least somewhat rehearsed. Like it's for like a conference where I'm coding something that I've done before, which is different than just trying to think of something that you're completely approaching for the first time on the fly.
Yeah, like this is probably awful. Like, why did I make a new list out of the loop and I'm pushing into a spread? Like, I don't know, but like, I'll do it, you know?
But like, I find, especially like for a lot of the code I write, especially for a first pass, like I just want to see the thing work before I worry about anything else. This is always time to go
like
back and
here I thought maybe there'd be like more than one west or east, and it turns out there's only one, so I could have done it not in a loop, but like whatever, you know, good enough. Let's see what else. Chart categories, that makes sense. Big data. I'm gonna look at the UI again here. So this bottom chart is kind of whatever we want it to be, or maybe I need to look at the PDF.
Yeah, the idea is that one of the two would show, and you can kind of flip between the table view or the chart view.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I think at this point, I would definitely I wouldn't worry too much about it. Probably just focus on the chart. But it was supposed to be just like almost like a data dump for the region, essentially.
Gotcha.
Because I think I'll bring up the chart on my end. Or I'll try to. There we go. Yeah, the grid had like an entry for each individual sort of restaurant in the region along with its ratings. So the columns were like customer rating, staff satisfaction rating, sales rating, cleanliness rating, and then the rows were each individual restaurant. And actually, I probably should have put that in the boilerplate like I did with the chart to make that a little more clear.
Oh, it's all good. I like how the emojis are in here.
Oh, that's
I thought
so.
it was like directly emoji, pizza emoji.
Create React app actually yells at you if you just try to put an emoji in there because it thinks it's like it's an accessibility violation.
Gotcha.
Oh boy.
Which I think is silly because like they're just purely decorational, right? Like I would want a screen reader or whatever to just skip over them entirely. Yeah. So I think the warning's kind of stupid. And this, I mean, I understand why it's there, but it's kind of silly. So I just put the span around it just to make the Create React app happy. Yeah. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I use plain emoji all the time. They're actually shockingly well supported. Like just about everything can display a simple emoji. I noticed too, neither of you guys jumped straight to like writing a unit test for some of this logic either, which I think totally makes sense. I wouldn't in this context either. But I'm curious if you were approaching this as part of your day job, would your habit be to think for testing for like parsing something like this, or would you just go straight into like creating a implementation first?
So the correct TDD answer is build a failing test first.
Right.
But all my stuff fails first anyways.
Yeah.
So I get it working, and then I write a unit test to make sure that that's actually what I meant. And half the time, once I get it working and I write the unit test, I'm like, oh, that's not even as good as this could be. Then I, refactor.
To be clear, I'm not bringing this up to judge in any ways because I totally wouldn't, in a real world scenario, write the test first. I think I would do kind of like what you said. Usually, especially for logic like this, like parsing a JSON file, I probably would write a test for this at some point, but it would definitely be something I'd use to like help me catch the edge cases rather than like drive my. Because I think there's one camp of people that are like all in on unit testing, at least in theory, and would write the test and I can sort of see the benefits of that, but I always find that I like to see something working first, and then I get into like a cleanup phase that includes testing and getting all the edge cases and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to like check it in without tests, but just to stub it out and make sure I'm actually getting it. Like I'm always console logging stuff. I know some people swear by like breakpoints, but I'm just like, just dump it out into the console. It should be some stuff. Okay, great. Then move on to the next thing, And I always put a big to-do, like remove this. But then I have my over here. I don't think I'm going to get done with this in time, but I guess I can show some of the other stuff I would normally do too. If you have Husky and then the lint staged NPM package, then whatever you put in lint staged, it will run it against only things that are staged in Git and only things that match this kind of pattern matcher for file extensions. So if I tried to commit this right now, it would yell at me because I have a console, and it's also telling me from like ESLint standpoint. But that's why I specifically have those rules in there. Otherwise, I'd commit consoles all the time.
Yeah, that can happen, and you start leaking stuff. Speaking of happening, we have a question here in the chat.
Wow.
DJ2OP says, "I'm in mechanical engineering 3rd year, and I have some knowledge about C++. Which language should I learn to get in the IT industry?"
Oh boy.
I mean, we're biased here, so I would say JavaScript, but
yeah. I mean, I think like JavaScript is probably the most like widely applicable and stuff. Like language, if you wanted to learn like one language and use it in a lot of places, like JavaScript works on the server side and the browser. But I've also like separately been having a lot of fun writing Swift code recently, just because coming from a language like C++, that's a little bit more. I mean, actually, no, I take this back. I think I really like writing Swift because I get to write products in it, and I think that's been a lot of fun to do. Is like see a product. I think Swift is a really cool language, but I think that's very specific to the sorts of thing you're trying to do.
Yeah, there's no good answer to this question, but I think mine is learn whatever you find interesting. Like don't necessarily approach it as in this is what I have to learn to get a job, but think more like what I enjoy doing, because the IT world is big enough, the programming world is big enough that if you get good or interested in a certain technology, there'll be jobs out there. So I try to just find something you enjoy building. Like for me, that was always the web. That's why I got into JavaScript and why I started building with the web.
Well, and that sort of begs the question here. Oh, sorry, Nathan, go on.
Oh, I pulled up a little Venn diagram here.
Yeah, I've just brought you up.
So there's this philosophy of igaki, like you might be really good at what the world doesn't need, or what you can get paid for might not be what you're good at, or it could be what you're good at, but it isn't what you love, So if you can find something in this middle where it's what you enjoy doing, it's what you can do as a job, it's what you're actually good at too. Like I might enjoy playing an instrument that I'm awful at and nobody wants to pay me to do it, But if you can find that sweet spot of like, you're doing hopefully good to the world or at least no harm, and it's something that you can get paid for, it's what you're good at and you enjoy it, then I would say do that. If you love C++, then go for it. If you want to branch out and do different things, like don't feel like you have to be pigeonholed in just because it's employable. If it's tech, somebody out there is hiring for it. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Yeah, and
I also say that
certain language kind of lend themselves to certain types of applications. Obviously, Salem, if you like Swift, the predominant use for that is in mobile applications.
Yeah,
it may not be the only. Yep, and for JavaScript, it's predominantly user interface web stuff. Although that's not necessarily true. You can write mobile apps with it, and even desktop apps. A lot of C++ is embedded systems or medical systems or really low-level operating type stuff. My next door neighbor works at Red Hat, and he's a big C++ guy. And so it almost, when you say, what do you love, I don't necessarily know if I would have been prepared to name the language I loved, but I definitely knew there were certain types of jobs I would be more happy doing than not doing. For example, I don't think it's a very high joy job to work on kernels. Some people get into that. It's not visual enough. It's not quick results enough for my personal taste. And so I didn't opt to go that route. I went for the web, A, because I could get paid for it immediately, and B, you could do something with immediate visual impact. And I like that a lot.
I got to say, like, one of the other things, and again, I think this relates to what both like you and TJ were mentioning before, is that like if you can find something that you like to do, that itself is like such a great motivator. Like going back to this dumb Swift example, have been excited about learning Swift because a lot of the work I've been doing recently has been about performance and about build systems, but not really about writing products. And I didn't really want to go back to writing web code because, like, A, I kind of see it every day and I wanted to try something new. And B, I also wanted to work on performance things that were so I wanted to make things that were performant, but performance is a little bit less of the most important thing. And that's a lot easier to do on a mobile application, I think, than it is to do in JavaScript. You have to very carefully make performance considerations every step of the way. And that totally changes how your application will function and things like that. But to my original point, it was really fun to write Swift code for me because I got to write this application I've been kind of interested in doing, and that has been the thing motivating me to learn Swift, rather than me being interested in Swift in and of itself and then trying to figure out what to do with it after.
So I've been watching me fumble here. I'm debating whether I should dig through the data at this level or the next, and I think I just made my decision because all regions is in here, so I'm not going to do anything with it at this level. I'm going to move my helpers down. Oh, I didn't mean to switch off the topic. I just didn't want people watching to be like, what is he doing? He's just copying and pasting. He's waiting out the clock.
That's right. Just running it down. TikTok. Hey, DJ2OP, did we cover your question good enough, or do you have a refining question? We're always happy to see new folks get in the industry. it's been very rewarding for me for sure.
Yeah, and thinking like meta about what we're doing, because if you are just joining us, basically this was really an experiment. So I'm starting to think, like, just talking out loud, that Dan, I think when we talked about this, we wanted to make sure that what we presented wasn't going to take up too much time. And I think even the scope that we had here is something that takes a lot of time to think and work through. So we either need like a longer time slot, or we need to, it's funny, like we could reduce the scope of the problem, but I actually think like the complexity level, like I'm finding it interesting the way these guys are approaching this and tackling this. We just might need a longer time slot to do this properly, like set aside 2 hours to do it rather than 1.
Yeah, maybe even like beforehand, like, hey, you're going to be using this chart component, like read up on the documentation, but without telling them what the problem is going to be.
Yeah, we struggled on that. In fact, I definitely want to hear your thoughts around, how we might improve this going forward. But I also think, we're drifting past 5 o'clock, and you guys probably have more interesting things to do than show us how to write great React code. So would it make sense to spend a few minutes where you can kind of talk through how you decided to tackle the problem and where you ended up, and then maybe what your next steps would have been, and then we'll kind of go between the two of you and then wrap up?
Sure.
And we can always schedule more time if you want to be the next victims. I mean, participants on The Code is Right.
The code is right.
Let me put this in here, then I can talk through kind of what I would have done next.
Sure. And old DJ to Op wrote back and said he won a parametric competition at university, but he's afraid being a designer won't pay enough, and appreciated our opinion. So we've done a good thing today. We've
if you can be like a designer who codes, or UI developer who has a good sense of design. Like, I feel like, having worked with a lot of good designers in my career, I'm not the Don Draper, There's definitely like way better designers, but I feel like having worked with them, it kind of rubs off on you a little bit. So as a UI developer, you can come back and say, hey, maybe we could think of trying it this way. It's something I've seen before on this particular client project or whatever. So it kind of gives you that, not aesthetic sense, but like that code smell, but for design, So if you can be like one of those types that knows how to push back on stuff and maybe work with the designers and kind of support them, that's, I feel like, is never a role that no team wants, or that's always a team that every team wants, No one's gonna look at your resume and say, "Oh, you got some design skills as well." Yeah, like, I always talk to my design coworkers as like, you guys are the forwards in soccer, and I'm midfield. Like, I'm probably not going to be in the poster shot, but I was the one that lofted it to you from midfield, and you're doing the bicycle kick, and then the team wins. I heard a really good preacher a while back, and he said, "There's no limit to what we can do if we would just stop caring about who gets the credit." Yeah. So if you can think of it more like an Olympic team sport where you're all going to get that gold medal, versus I want to be the one that scores the winning shot to the exclusion of everybody else, and then nobody gets to take the shot because we won't pass, that type of thing.
And there's a lot of emphasis now in designing products well. When I first started, if you got it on the web, it was good enough because you gave people access to something. But now, if you don't design a nice, well thought out, designed product, someone else is gonna eat your lunch.
So Nathan, you want to tackle just a brief synopsis of your approach and next steps and such first?
Yeah. One is, if you're gonna make a function, make sure it works. I don't know. This is not working right now. Let me see if data comes through.
Wise words from a wise man, folks.
Yeah.
Hang it on your wall.
It was working in the other file. Let's see what I'm doing wrong here. Get reference by region, right? Passing my data that came in here. Passing my region. Let's log data and region, see if I did that right. Shouldn't remove this, I want to keep that.
I'm very impressed at how great you are at typing. I'm actually horrible myself. I have no excuse. And
All right, we got data and we got
Artistic.
all regions, right? Oh, I know why. It's not finding all regions, is it? Hold on one sec. Let's see, restaurants. What I want to be doing is if it can't find it, then return everything, right? Yeah, okay, so that's why I was getting blanks. So I need to change my function here and say either return new list because it was filtered, or I want to do the original list. So I want to say new list.length, or I want to do list, because then all regions will by default have something in it. There we go, all regions. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so let's do restaurants and region here. Sometimes it's helpful to do this too, like you can go like that and then say region : restaurants. It logs something readable, so all regions are there. I guess I'm not filtering correctly. I just pass that all the way down, that's right. Well, what I want to be doing, I don't know, somewhere along the line I messed it up, but I want to be able to say, pass just everything down to the panel level, because there is a panel that's going to need everything. If there wasn't a panel that would need all regions, then I was going to sort them up here and then pass them down here by region. I was going to basically do, data equals, and then get thing, and then have my list here.
Yep.
Passing it down here, then I want to start picking apart the restaurants, collecting arrays of these values from whatever I'm getting at, like staff satisfaction or customer, and then start building that out. But I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong here. But yeah, that was kind of my thought process so far. And if you get stuck a lot, like if you're watching and you're like, oh man, straight out of college, I need to be able to like do this perfectly. Nobody does stuff perfectly, Most of the time, I'd say like 60% of the time doing any sort of coding, you're just asking yourself, why isn't this working? And 40% of the time you're, it works. So don't feel bad.
Well, like honestly, some of the biggest skill is just when things go wrong, like trying to learn debugging skills. And it's funny because both you guys, just watching you do similar tricks to what I always do. Like I almost never use the in-browser JavaScript debugger. Like it's very rare that I do that. I just old school console log all the time. Or like Salem, you had the window dot property name trick. Same sort of thing. It's funny just to see. Like I've never been a debugger fan.
Well, you also got into this back in the day where there weren't really great debuggers, right, TJ?
Yeah, there didn't used to be built-in browser debuggers. Or I remember Firebug was the first sort of JavaScript debugger that I would trust to use.
Which was awesome at the time. It sort of took this, how many alerts can you possibly add to an app, to something that felt like writing software.
Yeah, console.log didn't even used to work if you go back far enough. That wasn't even an option. Good old alerts.
One little hack you can do if you have prettier, like right now this is off the side of the screen because I've zoomed, you can just put a comment here and then it'll format correctly. So I have a lot of these empty comments where I'm like, I just don't want to have to scroll horizontally, and I'll force the arrangement of all the keys and values that way without having to like go and edit the prettier rules, which just would cause chaos throughout the entire project.
It's a nice trick because lots of times I do that manually and it's a pain. So Salem, you want to talk about where you're at, what approach you like, where you would go from here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got to the point where my strategy for this was just get it working and then leave a bunch of comments everywhere to make it like better in the future. So like, I got to the point where I was graphing different numbers. Don't actually know if they're right. Don't actually know if they're like doing anything.
QA will figure it out.
Yeah, right. I mean, to go all the way back to the discussion about unit testing, like if this wasn't a time box thing, I'd probably start by writing unit tests, not because I'm trying to be like like correct or like superior or whatever, but because like a lot of this stuff, like a lot of these tests would be about how we're transforming data and how specifically we're taking like pretty like isolated data in a specific shape and making sure that it gets into another shape. And that sounds like something that would be very straightforward to write unit tests for. I think like a lot of the hard part about writing tests is just getting started writing the test. And this is something that the barrier is very low for. In fact, we already have a bunch of test data. It's great. It's right there, all of it. So that would probably be something I would do a little bit different. I also like kind of got headfirst into just getting the data to show up on the graph particular part. And I didn't really look at the PDF because I assumed I wouldn't have the time to do it. But now having gotten to the part where I'm maybe trying to get some of the things to show up down here, I can see that we're using a lot of the same logic to get data on the restaurant level and then on the region level. And it would have been nice for me to have like if I had like a little bit more time or foresight, I might have written something to abstract away the accumulation of restaurant data before I tried something with region data. So like this function here, if you're squinting at my screen, totals up all of the data by region, and inside of it is logic that does the region by restaurant, and pulling that into its own function would maybe make some of this a little bit less repetitive. I didn't spend a lot of time making this easier on myself or on others. Like I probably would have liked to get prettier working with this, but I didn't really think about bothering with that. I just kind of like focused on getting it working. I also, like I kind of mentioned before, didn't do anything that would have been very like performance-minded, like asynchronously loading the JSON. Right now, I'm literally just importing it directly. So if I went to the browser in production and I looked at the built file, I'm sure it would be just much bigger than it needed to be. Yeah.
So then I think I'd end with, do you guys have any suggestions for trying this again? Like going through my head right now is this was probably like, I think what Nathan said is like, I think we do need to give out a little bit more in terms of prep so that we can try to hit the ground running as fast as possible. And either give a little more time or make the problem a little bit simpler, even just to. So I'm curious what you guys think.
I found it like maybe a little hard to focus on doing the coding part, but then also not to participate in the banter or like that sort of that.
Yeah,
my brain was kind of
context shift.
Two screens. Yeah, it wasn't bad though, but it was a.
You can't get in a flow with people talking, right?
Not unless you're super sick and can just do that. I know there's some people who can do that, but
Gotcha.
No, I'm totally like squirrel.
Yeah.
So one of the
Nathan, I think
debates we
you're
had
on mute.
back and forth was, if we messaged out too soon what you'd be doing, there's this feeling that you'd feel pressure to do a lot of pre-work, and that didn't seem respectful of your time. I mean, knowing what we just did and how we did it, would you have wanted a heads up? And if so, what form would that have taken? Or do you kind of like the way that this has been defined?
I mean, I guess if you wanted to discuss the different approaches in their like totality, that would have been fine. But I'm fine with how it turned out. Like, no complaints or anything. I think I've figured out too what's wrong here with or that there is something wrong. Check this out. So if I go console log region here, we comment it out over here, and I get.
Oop, I had the wrong screen up. There we go.
Then I get all regions north, south, east, west, right? If I do it at the app level. And if I comment that out, or shortcut puts it in JSX comment. Anyways, if I comment that out, and then I come over here and uncomment this one, you would expect to see the same thing, right? But it only ever does all regions, and I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong here. That's really odd.
Right,
because it's panel, right, in a loop. Like that should be unique every time it goes through, yeah?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't.
Interesting. Maybe I'll move it out of the map.
I actually don't. I'm gonna If you switch between the panels on the left-hand side of the UI, does it?
Oh, okay. I'm an idiot. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay.
And
All right.
it's
I'm
funny.
dumb.
I wasn't even paying attention to that either.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So it does do what I thought. The app doesn't work the way I thought it worked. Carry on.
But I think that's another reason, like for a little more, I don't know, prep time or something. Because basically, at the end of the day, we're trying to create something that is compelling to watch, that's entertaining, but that people can also learn from, and not like get too tied up with mundane stuff. So it's a tricky balance to find.
Okay. So here we go. East, south. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, what if we had more like pre-built stuff? Like some of this data filtering logic. Like that didn't seem to be necessarily important for the React piece.
Yeah, it could be like the app is more done and you just need to add on like one new feature sort of thing.
Well, if you go back to the PDF, you can sort of see in your mind like this hierarchy of components. And what I kind of thought, if I was doing this, first of all, it would take me a lot longer than you guys. But secondly, I would bust up all this HTML into components and then make them interactive and then start putting stuff inside the component.
Yeah, almost like a refactoring session sort of deal.
But I mean, neither one of you went that way, and so it probably wouldn't have worked out the way that I wanted. I'd still be scratching my head and wondering why I haven't written unit tests.
Well, I think it would get to that point, but the thing is, that's so far down the road. Like by the time you get to like splitting up your chart component and all that, that just takes time. Like I don't know if we can have people come in for like 3 or 4 hour streams to really build this out in its totality.
Yeah, I don't know if people would be able to stay through that, but
yeah, I don't know if it's that interesting to watch either. Like it's just a little too long.
Well, it could be cool. I mean, like some of the things that I found were cool were just like seeing the things that like Nathan did with his IDE, or like the things that like he copied and pasted in to like get some of this data in the right spots. And like that, I think, comes from working on a project and having a lot of experience in that particular project. So it may be cool just to like, for example, find an open source contributor that does a lot of regular work on the project, and then ask them to walk through what it would be like to like handle a pull request, or like fix an issue or something like that, and see like the soups and nuts about something that they know a lot about.
It's actually an interesting idea, because you're right. Like the things I found most interesting is like little things like the little tool you showed you used, or the like keyboard shortcuts or the approaches. So maybe we could give this a shot as just like almost like get an hour into your world of like how you work, what tools you work, but like actually try to see you do something, right? Like like evaluate a PR or something like that.
Yeah. I have just throwing it out there, I have like a really sick Vim set up on my other computer. I just would have been like a lot more like serious looking, I'm sure, like intimidating looking, but like with the exact same result.
I could totally see a session where somebody just brings somebody on to try to convince me to like Vim. Like that could be entertaining.
Listen, it's just like, it's like an extension of your brain. You just gotta like, it's just unreal how fast you think, and it comes out of your fingertips. It's like lightning.
I can't.
That's my
I'm bad at Vim. You would win that one for sure.
For
the call, I was joking with the host that for those people that are watching our stream, that this was going to feel like a job interview where you also have somebody else just on the interview doing it better than you live. Like, why are you failing here? This guy's got it over here. Like, imposter syndrome.
Like, also for all like people on the stream, etc. Like, don't use Vim unless like you have a really compelling reason to. Like, you should use whatever you like find easy and useful, because that's the best thing for you. I use Vim because in school we had to do a lot of work on remote machines, and it was just easier to get used to like some sort of remote editor. Also, because when you're in school, you have a lot of time to learn things like how to use Vim and like set up a really nice Vim file and like all that other stuff that like you probably don't really care about unless you're surrounded by a lot of other people who care about it.
Well said.
I love VS Code. I use it all the time. Like, it's a beautiful editor. Thank you, Microsoft.
All right, guys. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I got to get running here as well. So just thanks one more time. I appreciate this, and we'll have to chat to see where we want to take it from here. But I'm glad we got to run this, because Dan and I were chatting about this as like an idea, and I think actually seeing how this played out is going to help quite a bit. So we'll chat and see where we go from there. But we really do
there's a lot of
appreciate
neat stuff here. That I mean, it's really a lot of great nuggets people can grab from this. Just watching someone else approach things differently, and you guys are top level guys, so there's a lot of neat techniques here. Hopefully, people learn some things about. TJ, I do wish you the best camping trip possible. May the deer flies be somewhere else.
I hope so. We'll see. You never know. All right, guys.
Enjoy yourself.
All right, guys. I'll take us off. So thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks, guys.
Have a good day.